Crystal Maiden here for part 27, the final part of the Triforce quest. Here we're going to be getting all the rest of the Triforce Shards. A lot of people know about the early Master Sword glitch for Twilight Princess, but what people don't know is that there's actually a version of that for Wind Waker that was discovered for the HD version, no less. Basically, what you do is that you use a glitch where you skip the Gossip Stone, which I mentioned about in the part where my audio kind of sounded bad. Like, you skip the Gossip Stone, and you save warp out of the pirate ship. You super swim, which is a pretty cool glitch where you can swim really, really quickly. I'll explain that later. But yeah, like you super swim to the submarine in North Fairy Island, and you get put in jail because you don't have a sword, and so Moblin just does what it normally does at that point. Getting the Gossip Stone trigger from here is hard from the outdoors being pitch black due to the endless night rain effects not being applied properly. Because the game thinks at that point that you're supposed to be in the... Like, you're at the point in the game where you're at the endless night curse part. But you're not supposed to be in the Forsaken Fortress Phase 1 at that point in the game. There's also a glitch where you can actually skip getting the password. Like, you don't have to get the password to get into the pirate ship the second time. So that's pretty cool. And so you do that again. You get the bombs and complete Forsaken Fortress in the dark. You'll be spawned where the boat would normally introduce himself to you on Windfall Island, but that cutscene won't happen. Now, you just go to Forsaken Fortress without drowning, dying, save warping, entering load zones, or unloading the ocean, and making Link fall into the ocean again. This would make you lose Layer 8, which you gained from doing all that glitch stuff. Now you just clip into Forsaken Fortress using an item slide and climb to the top. I believe what an item slide is actually where you... That's really hard and difficult glitch to explain. Basically, I believe you take out the hook shot, and you pause the game with the gamepad while barely holding up on the control stick. And then as soon as you unpause, you just barely hold down on the control stick. And like slides away really quickly with the hook shot. So that's basically what an item slide is. People use that to skip the barrier outside of Hyrule Castle. So, you clip into Forsaken Fortress using an item slide and climb to the top, and use the Deku Leaf to avoid entering any doors. Pausing with the gamepad while looking up with the grappling hook lets you slide up that wall outside the fortress. If you did everything right, you'll be able to just walk right inside the boss room, triggering the fight with the Helmrock King, because on Overworld Layer 8, the door that normally would have sent you to Windfall Island at this point isn't loaded. From that boss room, after all that you did, like skipping the Gossip Stone and getting captured, and then getting captured again, use the Helmrock King skip glitch with the Deku Leaf and clipping through the wall with the bomb. And you can actually get the Master Sword from Hyrule early. This became an essential part of the speedruns in Wind Waker HD after the barrier was discovered. You can get the Master Sword before even getting, like, the Blue Pearl. Like, before even going through the Tower of the Gods. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, there were a lot of pretty interesting glitches that I just skimmed over, and I'll describe them more in depth at a later point. But yeah, this is a Savage Labyrinth. It's basically just a slugfest. You defeat all the monsters, and you progress through it that way. There's really no reason for me to show all of it off. That would be a giant waste of my time. You can actually one-shot those guys with the ice arrows, which is really cool. But, yeah. In the game's maps and stages 3D model directory, there's actually a folder named Tinkle with a C and not with a K. The model presents the interior of a house which only uses 2 textures. The first is a mess of paint with a cat-eye face standing out. This texture covers the walls, ceiling, canvas borders, and much more. The second texture is a regular wood texture with black, green, red, blue, and yellow paint lines, which is used for the ceiling fan, table, and door. It's unknown what the purpose of this house model was, or why it was removed from the final game. I'm guessing it was just a test room. Something cool about this part of the Savage Labyrinth is that with these torches here, if you use the hook shot and get hit by the fire, and like you're standing behind one of the torches, facing another torch, if you use the hook shot while you're damaged by the fire, immediately, like you have to really rapidly spam the hookshot button, you can actually launch yourself into the hole because you're taking advantage of Mercy Invincibility. Like, because you can hookshot the torch on the opposite end of the torch that you were facing. So speedrunners have used that. Like, speedrunners have used the iron boots to make it easier on them because they could just make it so that they didn't get knocked back as far. But you don't entirely need to do that. You just need to stand in the corner of the pillar. It can be an annoying glitch to do sometimes because enemies will attack you while you're trying to do it. But yeah, you had to go through all of the Savage Labyrinth just to get one Triforce Shard. This takes quite a bit of time. And a huge tip for Savage Labyrinth that I definitely recommend. Resist the urge to steal from enemies. Trust me on this, because you're going to lose a lot of health trying to steal from the enemies, especially when you're swarmed by enemies. So it's a good idea to just resist as much as you can the urge to use a grappling hook on the enemies in the Savage Labyrinth. Especially since you're at that point in the game where you don't need the money from the spoils anyways. Like, it's a habit at this point, so yeah. Of course, if you know how to drink potions infinitely, it's not really that big of a deal losing a lot of health, but still. Wind Waker is actually the first cel-shaded game that Nintendo's ever made, which is pretty surprising since they're usually known for being like a family-friendly game company, so you'd think that they would have made more before this. And it's also the first to have a yellow targeting ridicule when the hookshot is aiming for something hookshotable. Like, in Ocarina of Time, when you were facing something that you could hookshot onto, it didn't tell you that you could hookshot onto it. Like, you could be facing a ladder, or a vine, or something on a wall that you could hookshot onto in the Spirit Temple, and you wouldn't know that you could hookshot onto it. So it's amazing that this is the game where that yellow star in the targeting ridicule was introduced. You'd think that that would have been like a default feature. I really like the way the songs on the inventory look. Like how they're different colored Wind Wakers. It makes me imagine, like, if there were multiple different Wind Waker items that you could equip, and just pressing the Wind Waker button would make you automatically play that song. Like, that would have been a lot easier than, like, memorizing the songs. Like, the Wind Waker is kind of a musical instrument in this game, but I don't really consider it to count as one because it's so limited compared to the Ocarina of Time, where you can just play all sorts of different notes, like high and low, and you can even like there's a lot more freedom. You can play pretty much anything you want on the Ocarina, but it's so limited with the Wind Waker. Like, you can use the control stick to go into different times, but like that's about it. Like there's only 4 different notes, pitches that you can play for each time. I don't really feel like you can actually make a new song from the Wind Waker. It's not something that you're gonna have fun playing around with. But yeah, Ganon discovered Hyrule Castle. Go figure. I wonder what took him so long. I mean, seriously. I guess Link shouldn't have left the entrance to this place open then. Well, wait, didn't it close behind him? I guess that side puzzle really didn't do anything then. So why did Ganon wait this long before kidnapping Zelda? And it's always confused me, that previous scene, like, was that the real Zelda, or was that a fake Zelda made to trick Link and troll him? Cause, like, she had her back turned to him, and then she turned around and closed her eyes, and then immediately she was warped away. Like, was that just a coincidence or a trick? See how cheap that was? Like, I did a parry, and then immediately he attacked me. Because he was on the other side of him and was attacking at a different time than he was. But if you just spin attack spam, you'll be fine. This is pretty cool. Like, I really like how the black darkness look with their armor. Like, it looks pretty cool. And I love the music that plays here. I don't know why Ganon decided that after spawning these guys, he would make it so that the fire would disappear after you defeated them. I mean, if he just kept the fire there regardless of what you did, then he would have won. Link wouldn't have been able to escape. I mean, I guess the spell keeping the fire there is specifically tied to the life force of the darkness, but why would he do that though? In the Japanese version of the game, you can actually jump onto the wall to the right, and you can use the Deku Leaf and make it so that you can actually die during this cutscene and skip it. Cause like I think you just fall out of bounds. So that's pretty cool. You can't do that in the American version though, because there's an invisible wall that prevents you from standing on top of that wall. I was pretty annoyed with the HD version at first, and that was partially because I thought it was a lot less glitchy than the GameCube version. So it's pretty ironic that now the HD version speedrun has faster times than the GameCube version, and part of that is because it has the barrier skip and the GameCube version doesn't. Like, there's been so many different ways that people have tried to skip the barrier and they couldn't have. Like, it literally goes all around the castle. They really planned ahead and made sure that you wouldn't be able to skip it. A lot of people know this by this point, but if you use the hookshot on, like, the right part of that thing, I think it's the very top, you can actually get to the very top and Deku Leaf over to explore Hyrule Field itself. Although a lot of its grass isn't actually solid because it wasn't programmed to be solid. Like that's pretty cool. I'll talk more about that later. A weird thing is that the mountains around Ganon's tower include a small cave that you usually can't see while playing normally. And it's speculated that this cave may have been intended as a longer route to the tower rather than the entrance you take in the final game. So it's like they actually bothered to put a cave there in a part of the Hyrule Field that you can't normally see. It is really disappointing the way they use the Hyrule Field though. Like, instead of the Triforce quest, I think a lot of people would have been more happy if Old Hyrule was this entire field that you would explore. Like in Ocarina of Time. Like, you could just revisit that old part of Hyrule and, like, you would travel through there maybe to get to the Sage Temples. Hell, maybe that was how you access the third Sage Temple. Like, why do you have to access the 2 sage temples from above, like, Hyrule. Like, why couldn't you just travel through Hyrule itself? Like, it's pretty lame how you're only allowed to go through a very limited part of it on the way to Ganon's Tower. This puzzle stumped me when I was a kid, but it's not really that hard. You just have to create a platform really close to here, and then just climb up with the grappling hook. The gimmick of this, well, quote-unquote dungeon, I don't really call it that, is that it has a boss rush. And you'd think this would be a really cool concept because now you can have a brand new experience with the bosses by, oh. It robs you of your items. Who thought that was a good idea? Like that is exactly the same experience over again. I mean, it is a little bit faster because you have the Master Sword and that deals more damage. But if they're taking you back in time, and that's the excuse for why they're robbing you of your items, like, why are they letting you keep the Master Sword? Why don't they just revert you back to the Hero Sword while they're at it? Like, they rob you of your extra bottles, but they don't rob you of your... It's so inconsistent. You can see a health bar for the bosses finally, and that's because I have the Hero's Charm. So that's pretty cool. Although, I really do wish that the bosses just had a health bar all along. Because it really feels like a health bar is something that bosses should have. It's kind of weird seeing, thanks to this health bar, that dropping that giant thing on his head doesn't actually hurt it. It's just needed to progress to a phase where you can actually hurt it. Even though normally you damage the boss and that's how you progress to another phase of it. So that's pretty weird, but yeah, it's like you're not L-targeting him, but you can still see his health bar. So that just brings up the question of why you couldn't just always see the health bars of enemies right above their heads, whether you were L-targeting them or not. Also, why is Valu here and able to damage the boss? Why would Ganon summon him here? And I believe that the music in the boss rushes is slightly different, like more bare bones, which is especially noticeable here, but I don't quite remember. Like, you're fighting them in monochrome. I think it's more of a faded colors thing in the HD version, but yeah, what an underwhelming... I used to think this is one of the best parts of the game, because I used to think that the bosses were some of the best parts of the game. But now I realize that most of the bosses are actually pretty annoying. Like, the first boss isn't so bad, it's mostly repetitive with the first phase, because you're just dropping the ceiling on him over and over again. And then, for the next phase, you're trying to get him over to you, and you're vulnerable while you have the grappling hook equipped. So it's going to feel like a cheap shot when he actually attacks you. Like, there's only one good boss in the whole game. But yeah, with that cliffhanger, see you in the next part.